All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got your questions, go ahead and post them. Should be below the video if you're on a smaller screen, to the right of the video if you're on a larger screen, like a computer or something like that. So let's see here. Today is the 26th, right? All right. Looks like we got a couple in there to start. Okay. So, first question here is from Greg T. Says, "Hi Q, midway through the stable fluid spine course, doing things in my swing I've never done before. I feel my lead leg firing hip rotation, stopping me sliding, and upping spine angle. Am I on the right track? Will not see this live. 3 a.m. in Australia. Cheers." I mean, it sounds like it. Yeah, we want the lead hip to fire. We don't want to slide too much in the swing. I mean, fortunately, it's hard for me to know for sure, but if you pay attention to the test, look at your swing on video and see if it's matching what Clay is telling you to look at in the test as you're working through the stable fluid spine. That's going to tell you whether you're on the right track or not. All right, let's keep going. So WWCA says, "Hi Q, I may be victim to too many voices or TMI and swing thoughts. I've been using the divot board in my garage, but need to boil down thoughts to maybe two. Plus, just relax. I'm a senior golfer, ex-college athlete, relatively new to golf. Any guidance to quiet the brain?" Yeah. So basically, what I would say is, as far as swing thoughts are concerned, one thought at a time. You really can't think about multiple things at the same time that you're not really good at. So one thing at a time, and then it has to directly improve your ball flight or contact, right? So for example, let's say that you're chunking the ball. Well, a good swing thought might be to shift to the lead side. Make sure you're shifting to the lead side. That might be a good swing thought to have, right? If you're chunking the ball, a good swing thought wouldn't be to, maybe keep your left arm straight because it may not be directly correlated to that. Now, hey, if keeping your left arm straight directly, you find that it directly correlates to ball first contact, if that is the issue, then that's where I go. So here's what I'd look at. What are my ball flight contact issues, right? So am I making ball first contact? Am I hitting the ball in the center of the face? Am I squaring up the face? And is my club coming down to the ball in a neutral way? Meaning, I'm not swinging too much out to in or too much in to out, right? And then whatever thought that you have has to be directly correlated to improving whatever the issue is, right? So, like I said, for example, I would look at it in that order, right? Because really, ball first contact is the most important thing because none of the other things really matter unless you're doing that well, right? So ball first contact, if you're chunking a lot of shots, those are devastating, right? Because that's basically just add another stroke, to the hole. That's essentially, what it comes down to. So, you know, hitting, hitting a little bit of a slice doesn't always, because you're still advancing the ball, you're still getting the ball a lot closer to the hole. Whereas if you chunk a ball, you hit a dribbler 10 yards in front of you, that's just adding a stroke. And not to mention, it might add more because of the mental, you're probably going to be frustrated, right? And that can lead to more poor shots, right? Depending on how mentally sound you are, when you're out on the course. So, depending on how good you are at letting those shots go. I'll be the first one to say I'm guilty of not letting shots go for sure, all the time. So yeah, there's that part. So I would look at that, and then whatever you think about just has to be to improve that. If, let's say, you're making ball first contact, but you're not making center face contact, you're hitting the ball off the toe all the time, then your thought should be to hit the ball off the heel, right? To change your intention to hitting the ball off the heel, to move the strike more to the center, right? If you are slicing the ball, that means the face is too open. Then your thought might be, okay, I need to use a stronger grip, right? So I would look at what are the ball flight contact issues, and then whatever your swing thought is, it has to be to improve your ball flight or contact directly. All right, let's keep going. So JP says, Q, I noticed while watching the pros on TV warm up and prepare to hit golf ball, they tend to do a few short swings. Sometimes it's a little more of a full swing. Is it to visualize the shot and have an actual swing feel? Feel can be misleading at times. Yeah, I mean, it sometimes it is. Sometimes it's just like staying loose. Sometimes it's visualizing how the club is going to be working through the arc. Sometimes it's getting a feel because if you notice, sometimes they'll hit the ground a little bit. It's just getting a feel for where the ground is, right? So it's a lot of those things. Yeah. All right, keep the questions coming. All right, so Kevin B says, I purchased the swing plate per Clay's recommendation. The videos show the backswing and downswing are on the same shallow plane under the rod. So first of all, not necessarily. Your backswing plane does not have to be on the same plane. It can be more inside, it can be more outside. The only thing that matters is how the club is coming down into the ball, right? So whatever backswing you make to be able to get the club to work down to the ball in the downswing the correct way is the swing that works for you. There's lots of different ones. You're going to look, I mean, you can look at all-time greats, and look at, okay, here's Raymond Floyd, right? Raymond Floyd was here, right? Then you look at, current player that's kind of on the other end of the spectrum would be like a Matt Wolff, who's out here, right? But if you look at them at this point in the backswing, one is here and one is here, very different, right? But if you look at them in the downswing, they're both here, right? So there's lots of ways to get here, right? It's about what works the best for you. So that's what I would say as far as the backswing. Clay has shown in a few other videos that the backswing should be more steeper plane than drop down to come through shallow. Again, it doesn't matter. It only matters how it comes down. So that's what I'd be focused on, is how it comes down. So advice looks to work great for the downswing, but I'm not understanding the backswing as it's supposed to be steeper. Then I would hit the rod. Can you please explain a little better? Yeah. So whatever backswing you need to make to get the club to work down the correct way is the backswing you should make, right? So if you find that the backswing, when you bring the club back where you are able to get the club to work down nicely and that hits the rod, then it probably not the best drill for you to get the club shallowing out. If that's something that you're struggling with, right? So you can bring it back above the rod, right, and bring it down. You can bring it back way under the rod and bring it down just under it. So it's just something. If you're struggling with coming down steep, right, a lot of times players actually do better bringing the club because it's going to be on. We don't necessarily want to bring it back like this. You can really, the only place where it's going to be a problem is if you're just bringing it back exactly where the stick is, right? So if you find that if you bring it back like this, way more out in front of you, more like this, and that helps you to get it underneath more, right? Then this probably isn't the best drill for you. But I can sit here and I can go kind of the Matt Wolff route and bring it way out above, right? And then in. Or I can bring it back kind of the normal way, which would be kind of this, right? So this would be kind of in line with my hands, right? That would be like what most tour players are doing, where they're kind of bringing it back where it's more inline or just outside. But even if it's just outside, you're going to miss it, right? Or you can bring it more inside. It's up to you, but you can bring it back on whatever plane. You just have to experiment with it to find what works best for you, right? Oftentimes people say that an inside takeaway is bad. It just depends on what you do with an inside takeaway, right? Because I've seen people. So for example, like if I bring the club inside, very much inside, some people will manage that by when they get up to the top, they kind of get the club kind of going back over, right? So it kind of ends up kind of looking like that a little bit. Sometimes, not everybody, because if you look at, there's, like I said, Raymond Floyd, he brings it back inside and then brings it down in a good spot, right? So you can bring it down in a good spot, even if you bring it inside, really far inside. But you don't, if you're using that drill, you don't have to bring it really, really far inside. You can bring it back in line with your hands like that. That's going to put you in the same spot. That's not going to hit the stick. So the only way that would be a problem is like if you're just bringing it back exactly where the stick is, and if that's where you find is the best way for you to bring the club back to be able to shallow it out. And if that's the case, a drill that you can do would be like in the 20-minute shallowing fix, Clay shows the impact bag drill, right? So there's actually a couple different things you can do. So you can have it where it's behind, like you have like a box or like impact bag or something behind and to the right of the ball. And basically what you do is in your setup, you'd set up here, but then you would set up with the club behind it. So you'd set up in your normal spot. Because if you're someone who likes to bring the club way outside and more steeply like this, and that helps you to bring the club more shallow, then you're going to hit this box in the backswing, you're going to hit the stick or whatever, right? Unless you go really, really far steep. So what you can do is you can get in your setup and then just take the club and put it behind it and then start your swing from there. And you can start your steep swing, steep backswing from there. Or what you can do is you can put this more in front of you as well. So you can use the stick, right? And you can put that stick more in this area, right? And if I come over the top, right, I'm going to hit that. So this is going to force me to get my hands kind of working, above, as you're coming through. So that could be something that you could do as well. Or you can put a box in front of you. There's lots of ways, but I would just try to find a way to, give yourself some feedback on whether the club is swinging from the inside or not. And that's what I would do. So JP says, Q, how do you keep arms connected with body, moving in arms or body, not getting ahead of you? I seem to become out of sync. Well, you really don't. Not in the full swing. You really don't. In a short chipping motion, yeah, you're going to be more connected. But if I were literally connected throughout my swing, I would look like this, right? And that's not going to be a very powerful swing. So I don't like the feeling of connection. You actually need to disconnect to be able to get good speed. So I like to see the arm separate from the body and get more like this, right? This is not I'm not connected up here, right? My left arm is moved away from my chest, right? And my right arm is moved away, right? But then I'm going to, when I bring the club back in, I'm going to kind of reconnect, right? So you need to disconnect if you want to have good power and speed and distance. So that's what I would recommend doing. So WWCA says, what feel will help you get the hands ahead of the club head more for shaftling at contact? Doesn't really exist. There isn't something I can tell you to feel. Like if you're someone who your whole life, you've been playing golf for 20 plus years, and you're someone for your whole life has come into contact like this, right? There's nothing I can tell you that's going to suddenly make you start getting your hands up here. It's not going to happen. You have to train it. It's something that you have to train. And if it's that easy, then really everyone would just have their hands way in front. I wish it was. I wish it was as easy as, yeah, just feel X and your hands will be ahead. Unfortunately, it just does not work that way. You have to train it. So and you have to attack the root cause as to why your hands aren't ahead at impact. Now there are several of them, but one very often or a very common one that I see is that the club face is open, right? So a way that you can kind of check this pretty easily is to video your swing from down the line and to see where your club face is pointing when the club is parallel to the ground in the downswing. So if that club face is pointing up toward the sky in any amount, that club face is open, right? And what we have to understand is that releasing the club, putting the club head more in front of our hands, right? That's releasing it. That is a way to get the club face closed, right? So if you have the club face open, oftentimes you are releasing it, throwing it in front of the hands, right? Is a way to get the club face squared up. So that's a pretty common one. Another one is coming down steep, right? So if I'm coming down steep, then one way I can get the club to shallow out is to stand up out of my posture, right? So if I'm like this and then I do that, look what happens to the club. It lays down, it shallows out. Now I can swing that club from the inside. The problem is I've had to stand up to do it. When I stand up to do it, I have to throw the club in front of the hands, release it to get to the ball, right? I have to reach the ball, because if I'm way up here, I'm kind of standing up and then I'm coming in and I'm like this at impact. Well, I'm not getting down to the ball. I need to release it. I need to throw it out to get the club head farther away from me, right? Because if I have shaft lean, that's going to put the club head closer to me, right? So here would be, no shaft lean at contact. Now, if I'm not going to change my posture, I'm just going to put that club there, and then I'm going to put my hands in front. Well, look, now it's closer to me. I have to be closer to the ground to be able to make that work, right? So coming down steep is another, common cause, right? Physical limitations can also be a common cause, right? So there's lots of things there. You have to tack what it is. So here's what I'd recommend that you do. If you want to, again, it's not, trust me, I wish there was something I could tell you. Just feel this. I wish there was. But trust me, if there was a pill I could take that would make me, a +5 handicap, I would do it in a second. You know what I mean? It just doesn't exist. There's no magic pill. So what I'd recommend doing is work through the 20-minute shallowing fix. The reason why I would say work through the 20-minute shallowing fix is because it addresses both of those common causes that I talked about. In the 20-minute shallowing fix, you're going to work to get the club face more closed, right? The club face is more closed, then you're actually incentivized to get the hands more in front. You have to be incentivized to get the hands in front. If the face is open and or you're coming down steep in the start of the downswing, you're not incentivized to get the hands in front, because if you do, you're either going to hit the ball way to the right, right? Because if I'm coming down, this face is pointing up to the sky, and I stay in my posture and I keep my hands in front, that face is just going to stay wide open. I'm going to hit everything to the right, right? So I'm actually incentivized to release it so I can square it up. If I have this club face more angled down toward the ground, right, and let's say that I release it early and I stand up, well, now my club face is going to be really close. I'm going to hit everything to the left. Now I'm actually incentivized to get my hands more in front, so that way it gets the club face more pointing toward the target, right? If I'm coming down, if I have the club really shallow like this, right, kind of laying down as I'm coming down, and then I stand up, well, look, that club's going to be even more shallow, and I'm going to get my path working too much to the right. Most of the time, that's going to lead to chunks and tops, because your club's going to be bottoming out way too far before the ball. But let's say I happen to be able to hit the ball solidly, then I'm going to hit blocks, maybe block slices and hooks. That's typically what I'm going to hit. So I don't have any incentive, right, to stand up out of it. If I have the club really shallow, now I actually have incentive to stay in my posture and rotate, because you can see how that neutralizes my path, right? And then you can look at, maybe I'm not physically capable of staying in my posture and rotating through the shot. And this may be your solution to being able to play golf when you're maybe not as physically capable of, someone like a Dustin Johnson or something like that, right? So that's really what it comes down to. So what I'd recommend doing is work through the 20-minute shallowing fix, get the club too close, get the face or get the club too close, get the club too shallow, right? And that will actually incentivize you to do the things that you want to do. And then from there, you work through the top speed golf system through each piece. You go through the stable fluid spine, because they all have an influence on it. If your spine angles are way off, then honestly, the last thing you need to think about is how far your hands are in front. All right. So you need to get your spine angles in a good spot. If your spine angles aren't in a good spot, it's going to be very, very difficult to get the club to release out in front anyway, and to get the hands in front at impact. So that would be number one. Number two is power turn. It doesn't have as big of an influence as a lot of pieces, but it can have a little some influence. So if I'm not making a big turn, right, I'm going to try to get speed from another way, right? And that may be that, that feeling maybe for a lot of people is to throw the club out as quickly as they can, right? So that could be part of it. If I'm not getting a good turn, right, imagine I don't turn my shoulders at all, right? I just bring it up like this, right? Well, if I'm here, I basically have no choice but to come down steep. So what I may do from here is I may stand up to get the club to shallow out, and that can cause an early release. So getting a big turn, so that way you're in a position to shallow out the club, right? That is, something that you can do. So the power turn has an influence on, right? Lag, right? If I'm at the top of the swing and I just throw this club out right away, it's going to be very, very difficult for me to come into it. If I'm already throwing it out up there, there's no way I'm going to have it down here, right? There are a few players that kind of do a controlled cast, like Steve Stricker. He kind of does a controlled cast coming down. Now, these players that do this controlled cast typically don't have a ton of club head speed, like a Steve Stricker or forget his name. But anyway, he's one of the best ball strikers on tour for a long time. He's playing on the Champions Tour now. For some reason, his name escapes me. He won a major, but he only swung about 105 miles an hour, which, he's lucky he played in the era that he did, because he can survive at that club head speed, because he overcome it with just such great ball striking. I don't think the guy ever missed the middle of the face. I apologize, his name escapes me, but he just didn't have a lot of speed. You wouldn't be able to do it in today's PGA Tour, or even Live Golf, or any of that. It'd be really tough. But anyway, you can do it, but you're going to tend to not have a lot of speed, and speed has a lot to do with how low your handicap is. It's one of the highest correlations. And then next would be compression line, right? So if I'm coming into contact and my hip's really bumped out and this is getting all jammed up and I can't turn through, that can be a problem, right? So the compression line is another one. And the last piece is the release. So it's all, those are all prerequisites, right? And I wish it was a lot easier, but getting the club to release more out in front is the most difficult thing to change in the swing. And it is not even close. And the reason is because there's so many things that you have to be doing in your swing to be able to do it, right? And it makes it, because and also it has an influence on so many variables of impact, right? So your release changes the club face direction. Huge influence on where the ball goes. Probably the biggest influence on where the ball goes, right? It has a large influence on where you're hitting the ground, right? Because if I'm here and I release it, I'm going to hit the ground there. If I'm here and I release it way later, I'm going to hit the ground way up here, right? So it has a huge influence on where you're hitting the ground. Right now with your swing, you've got some coordination with where you're hitting the ground with how you're releasing it. And you're going to have to relearn that if you change your release, right? Which makes it very, very difficult. So it just has a lot. It's a very, very difficult thing to work on. So I would recommend start with the 20-minute shallowing fix, then work through the top speed golf system. Um, just diligently work through it, get better every single day. Work on it every single day if you can, even if it's just for 15 minutes, and it'll help. All right, let's keep going here. David, yeah, it was David Toms. That's who I was for some. Thank you, John. For some reason, his name escaped me, but yeah, he kind of had a controlled cast coming down. One of the best ball strikers on tour. When he was playing on the PGA Tour, probably is now when he's on the Champions Tour. But he swung about 105 miles an hour, right? So makes it tougher though. When you're swinging. So if you think about it, let's say he's playing against like a Tiger, right? A Tiger, he's swinging 120 something at the time that he's swinging 105 on the PGA Tour, right? So there's about 2.6, 2.7 yards per per mile per hour. So if you look at, we just do some math. Let's just say modestly, he's swinging 15 miles an hour more, right? Let's say it's 105 to 120. I think Tiger was probably swinging one more than that. But I mean, he swings 120-ish now, over 120 now. So I know at that time he probably was swinging faster than that. But let's just say modestly 15 miles an hour. So if we take 15 times 2.6, that's basically 40 yards, right? So it's pretty. I mean, I'm sure you might play with people, or played with somebody that's out driving you by 40 yards, right? It's tough to beat that person. It's really, really tough. It's hard to overcome that with good ball striking. Now, David, to his credit, he did it for a long time, but he's kind of an anomaly. I would say he's an outlier because there really anybody doing that other than him for the most part, or did that. All right, let's keep going. So Dave I says, I want to get fit for a new driver soon. Do you have any tips to get the best results, such as swing at play speed or max speed or both? Should I bring the golf ball that I usually play? What would you do? I would ask your fitter. Wherever you're going to get fit, I would ask them because all a little bit fitters are different. I'm not a professional club fitter. What I would say is when you go and get fit, just ask a lot of questions. Make sure that you have a full understanding of why they're doing X, Y, or Z. I personally, again, I'm not a club fitter, but I like the way that Club Champion does it. I'm not a big fan of how they can you can go in there and spend a lot of money, right? But you can also go in there and here if you go to Club Champion, because they're going to try to upsell you. Their business, they're going to try to upsell you. They're going to try to put you in. They're going to try to purify your shafts and all that stuff. Honestly, you probably don't need any of that. So what I would do is I would go in there and tell them that you have a budget, right? This is the budget that I have, right? And then so that way they know what they can work with, right? And they may still kind of upsell you, but at least you have that thing where, hey, that puts me over budget, so you have an easy out, right? Because they may keep trying to kind of sell it to you. But here's what Club Champion does that I really like is you're going to go in there and you're going to hit on their simulator. And sure, I guess you can bring your own balls, but here's what I would say about the golf balls is golf balls all go the same distance, right? They're not really going to go much different in distance. The only thing they're going to vary with is speed for the most part. Speed is spin for the most part is what they're going to vary the most in. So yeah, you can bring your own golf ball, but I imagine that's something that they'll talk to you about. And they probably have a lot of different golf balls there as well. But yeah, something I would ask, right? Ask them. But I ask a lot of questions. Go in with a budget. Let them know what the budget is. Ask a lot of questions. I like the way that Club Champion does it because they have you bring in your old clubs, and you know you're uh, you know you're going to hit your old clubs, and then they're going to build some clubs, right? Or kind of build a club and kind of show you the difference between the two. So that way you can clearly see your clubs were doing this, the club that we just made you is doing this, right? And then you can continue to ask questions and things like that. So that's what I would recommend doing. And then I feel like there was one other thing. You ask a lot of questions. Yeah. Oh yeah, you were asking about should you swing at play speed or max speed or both. Depends on what you're getting fitted for. Are you getting fitted to enter long drive contests, or are you getting fitted for a driver that you're going to use on the course? If you're getting fitted for just a driver you use on the course, you just swing at your play speed. If you're getting fitted for long drive competitions, I'd probably go at your max speed. So I would venture to say your guess that you're probably getting fitted for play speed, so you don't need to go at max speed. Ben Crane swung around 105 miles per hour. Yeah, I know that he's worked on club head speed. Let me see here. Let me see if he's increased or not. Because that's and Ben Crane is struggling, right? I mean, as far as from obviously he's a really good golfer, but struggling to. I'm guessing he's struggling to keep his card. See if it says what his speed is. Yeah, he hasn't won in. Last win was the St. Jude in 2014. Yeah, he won it in 13 and 14. Trying to find see your stats. Let's see here. What's his off the tee driving? That's not really saying. Yeah, off the tee loses half a stroke to the field. He gains strokes in putting, so that's kind of his strong suit is putting, it looks like. I don't know if it's always been that way. Trying to find where it says. Yeah, driving distance is 290. So can't really be yeah. Yeah. He's not swinging 105 anymore. He's got to be swinging. If your average driver distance is 290 or 290.9, then like he may have been 105 at one time, but not now, for sure. I don't know what he was swinging because he had a decent stretch there decent few year stretch there. So he had an early win. It looks like early win in 03. Then a couple of years later, he won in 05. Then he went on a 5-year drought. Didn't win until 2010. But then 2010 to 2014, he had 4 wins. So had a good little 4 or actually 5 wins because he had an international win as well. It looks like the Asia Pacific Classic. So yeah, he had a nice little 4-year stretch, but like I don't know what he was swinging at those times. But now, right now he's definitely not swinging 105. You can't drive at 290 and swing 105 on average. You might get a couple drives there 290, but you're not going to average 290 if you're swinging You need to be swinging probably 113 to 112 to be doing that. Which is basically 113, I believe, is the tour average. 114 is tour average, somewhere in there. All right, keep going. John S says, do you advocate practicing at different speeds while always making a full turn as a means to improve? Yeah, I mean, it can help you to find your rhythm a little bit, to find what you know rhythm and tempo works best for you. I definitely, I am a huge advocate of slow swings when you're trying to change your swing. Um, I think that's a thing that a lot of people, you know, don't quite do when they're trying to change their swing. Is they just try to go full speed with the golf ball, and it's okay to try that at first. But what I find a lot of people do is they're going full speed with the golf ball, and they're getting frustrated that they can't make the change. Well, that's kind of like Einstein's definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. In order to change your swing, you have to regress things to where you can do it. A form of regression is going slower. That's my favorite form of regression. So I'm a huge advocate of that. Um, and I would say I'm somewhat of an advocate of what you're talking about, just practicing at different speeds, even if you're not working through a swing change, to help you kind of better find your rhythm and tempo. Because I get questions about rhythm and tempo a lot. I need to find that 3-to-1. I guarantee you, there's no tour players that are thinking about swinging 3-to-1, right? And when I say 3-to-1, I mean the backswing is 3. Maybe you can think of it as like 3 beats, and then the downswing is 1 beat, right? Because the downswing is obviously much faster. And they've done research, and they found that most tour players are around that 3-to-1, ratio. But I guarantee you, they're not thinking about that. They're not really trying to get that. That's a product of just having proper sequencing and stuff in the swing, right? And there are some players that are absolutely not 3-to-1. If you look at like a Colin Morikawa, very deliberate backswing, and a fast downswing. So he's probably, I mean, I don't know for sure, but just looking at his swing, I don't know how it's possible for him to be 3-to-1. And Roy McIlroy is quite a bit faster, I think, than a 3-to-1. He's probably like a 2.5-to-1. John Rahm, very quick tempo. So you just have to find your own tempo that works best for you, and doing what you talked about, where you're taking full swings, but going slower, and then maybe going to the other side of the spectrum, taking full swings and swinging as fast as you can. Somewhere in between there, you're going to find what tempo and rhythm works the best for you, and that's what I would stick with. So it could be a great exercise if you feel like your rhythm and tempo has gotten off. All right, so Tom says, any idea what realistic swing speed would be for a 60-year-old, or is it just too individual dependent? I'm at 90 with driver currently. It's really very individually individual dependent. But I believe the average for a 60-year-old is going to be around 85, I think 83 maybe. Let me so I have found some research on this. Let me pull that up, because this is a part of our presentation for the distance clinic, and I can't remember exactly. I have a chart. Right. So, by decade, so a professional golfer in their 60s, the average is 102.4. That's the best golfers in the world. And then if you look at recreational golfers in their 60s, 84.7 is the average. So yeah, that's what I thought, was around 85. So yeah, and then if you want to look at in their 50s, 87 miles per hour, right? So I would say you're right around, above average for your age group. But again, it's very dependent on the individual. I have, I've worked with, male golfers that are in their 60s that are swinging, 70 miles an hour, right? I don't know, as we get older, we have things that happen, right? We have health issues, we get arthritis, we do all kinds of things that can slow us down, right? And then, obviously there's, if you look at like a 20-year-old, the health spectrum of a 20-year-old is quite a bit smaller than the health spectrum of a 60-year-old, right? If you look at a 60-year-old, you can have a 60-year-old that is in the really great shape, uh, banging on all cylinders and all that stuff. And then you can have a 60-year-old that's, you know, uh, got issues, right? Got a lot of health issues. That can definitely affect your club head speed for sure. So, it's very individual dependent, especially as we get older, because the spectrum of, you know, the least healthy to the most healthy is going to be quite a bit bigger, on average for sure. So, um, so yeah, that's what I'd look at. But I worked with a golf. Part of the reason why I did the research on that is because I had a golfer that I worked with in the online lessons that we were working on club head speed, and he started at roughly around 100 miles an hour, and then he got up to like 111 was his max, 110, 111. And generally, that's what I found. Like untrained individuals can generally gain about 10 miles per hour, assuming you're physically capable of doing the drills and things like that. Um, that's generally what I found is what you can get. And people that have shared the results with us working through the 20-minute distance fix, that's kind of what they found as well, right? Just all those people working through it. So, but anyway, we worked through it, and he wanted more club head speed. We were kind of hitting like a wall a little bit, where those first 10 miles an hour are typically the easiest to get, the first 8 to 10, and then after that, it each mile per hour is more difficult to get. That's just usually the way that it works, because you get all the low hanging fruit stuff, and then now you're working on stuff that's a little bit more difficult to achieve, but it does help you get more club head speed. So anyway, we got to that point, and I could tell he was frustrated and things like that. And I knew he was older, but I didn't know how old he was, just because when you look on online, and at this time I wasn't asking people I asked what the age is now, just so I have an idea. But at that time I wasn't asking the age and stuff like that. But he said he was 74 years old, so he's 74 years old, swinging 110, 111, and still wanted to get more speed and stuff like that. And I'm thinking 110, 111. First of all, there's really no golf course, for the most part, unless you're just playing tipped out, super long, really tough conditions, something like that, that you're not going to be able to play well with that kind of speed. I would say 110, you're going to be able to play, about anywhere, with that kind of speed. Because, like I said, you're going to be 290 off the tee, 285, 280 to 290 off the tee. If you're hitting 280, 290 off the tee, that's going to be good enough to play about anywhere, right? You're not going to be playing like the PGA level tees. You're going to be playing, even if you're playing the tips at a golf course, that's usually not going to be like, if they had a tournament at wherever you're doing that, it probably wouldn't be where the pro, tees are. Anyway, you're not going to have a problem, hitting those tees. But anyway, I thought, man, 74 years old, he's probably in the 0.001 percentile of golfers in the world that swing 110 miles an hour at 74 years old. Probably not that many of them. But also, Tom, what I would also say is, it doesn't mean that, you're above average, right? So you're 60 years old, you're swinging 90 miles an hour with your driver. That's definitely above average, right? That's, if I'm looking at the chart here for recreational golfers, 40 to 49 is 91.3, right? So you're right around in that, right? To where, kind of the late 40s, the average of the late 40s golfers, right? So you're kind of in that area. You're above average, but that does not mean that you can't gain more club head speed, right? The guy that I was talking about, he was at 100 miles an hour as a 74-year-old. That's already leaps and bounds above. That's like where the best players in the world are already at, in their 70s, right? for club head speed. And then he got another 10, 11 miles an hour after that. Right. So it's not that you can't gain more club head speed from there. If you're interested in getting, because I mean, it's going to be a huge advantage. If you're physically capable of doing the training and getting more club head speed, that's going to be a huge advantage over your counterparts. If you're playing other people that are in their 60s, I mean, you're going to have a huge advantage on those golfers. You guys are playing from the same tees, right? So, it's definitely, I definitely recommend training it if you're physically capable of doing it. But 90 is a good number, but I mean, if it could be more, then that's even better, right? All right. Like I said, let's see here, got about 13 minutes left if we have any more questions. No worries if not. So John S says, I imagine getting speed at the right place and time is important. Yeah, of course. You want it at impact. You don't want it up here. You don't want to get the speed up here, right? You want to have it at impact. So yeah, very, very important for sure. If you're not getting at impact, then it's not really doing you much good, right? So Mike says, do you intentionally snap your wrist at impact? I mean, not everyone, right? So here I get questions like this all the time and they're always really tough because I know why you're asking it. Because you're wondering if you should be trying to do it or not, but it's just not that clear cut of an answer. So here's what I would say. If you look at your swing on video and you are not doing something that you want to do, you're going to need to have some sort of conscious effort, right? People ask me, am I consciously doing this? Am I actively doing this? Am I intentionally doing this? Right? Or is it just natural? Well, it really just depends. You may need to intentionally do it, or you may not, right? If it's something that you do naturally without intention, then you're not going to need to intentionally do it. If you're someone who's coming through impact, if you're someone who's coming through impact like this, right, you're going to actually probably need to feel that. But if you're someone who's coming into impact like this, and you probably don't need to feel an intentional, snap of the wrist because you're already doing it, right? So, yeah, it really just depends. So that's what I would say is if you are someone that you're looking on video and you're wondering, am I intentionally doing this or whatever? If you're doing what comes natural to you and you're looking at it on video, and you're not doing that thing, then you're going to need to consciously introduce something in order for it to happen, right? And then you're going to need to work through the stages of learning to get to where it is unintentional or unconscious, right? So there's 4 stages of learning, right? The first stage is unconscious incompetence. So this is where, if, let's say for your example, you're not even aware of what snapping the wrist is, or what's going on. This is your first day of golf, or whatever, or maybe not even your first day of golf, but you've just never really thought about snapping the wrist, or that's something you need to do. You're completely oblivious, right? So that's the first stage. The second stage is conscious incompetence. So this is where now maybe you've looked at your swing on video and you've seen that you're kind of coming through input. This would be extremely rare, or non-existent probably. But let's say that you look on video and you see that you're coming through contact like this, right? There's zero release of this club. You're just turning your body through, and there's no release of the club, right? Let's say that you saw that on video. Well, now you become aware of it. You become conscious of it, but you're incompetent in how to do it, right? You don't know quite how to do it. Then let's say you work through the straight line release course, and now you understand, okay, I need to release the club. I've done these drills. Now I'm able to do it. This is when you work into stage 3, which is called conscious competence. This is where you are able to do it, right? But you have to actually be conscious of it. The moment that you are not thinking about it is the moment you go right back to what you're doing before. And then you do it with enough reps that you work into the last stage, which is unconscious competence, where you are releasing the club without any conscious thought. So that's kind of how it works. So Tom says, thanks. My goal is to get to 100. I've done the 20-minute distance fix. It was great. And doing Clay's indoor drills now. It's cold here. No need to comment further. Thank you. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, sounds like you're on the right track for sure. I mean, if you're swinging 100, or if you can get up to 100 at 60, you're going to be a lot faster than most for sure. So JR says, good morning, Q. I've been working on the 20-minute distance fix. I've seen your shafts on all my clubs. If the PRGM monitor is reasonably accurate, my playing speed is around 107. I'm 80. Health overall has been very good. Best. Awesome. Yeah, that's pretty insane. I mean, if you can swing 107 with a driver at 80 years old, you are well above any of your counterparts for sure. So Jack says, is the shoulder tilt different, more flat for a driver than with a mid iron or short iron? Yes, only because the club is longer, right? If I have a longer club, right? If I have a wedge, this is like an approach wedge basically. So if I have this club, because the club is shorter, I'm going to be a little bit more bent over to it, right? But with a driver, driver compared to this club, it's like a whole grip length longer, right? So with a driver, I'm going to be standing a little bit more upright. For an iron, for that wedge, I was more like this, but for a driver, right, I'm going to be a little bit more upright. So because of that, my shoulder plane is going to be a little bit flatter. It's not something you're trying. That's the other thing too. It's not really something you're trying to do. It's just something that comes with a product of the club being on. Imagine if you had a club, I have this PVC pipe here. Imagine you had a junior club or something that was this long, right? And you were hitting it. Well, if you went up to where your shoulder plane is with the driver, you'd be way up here, right? So you have to really get, if you want to hit that, you got to really keep the shoulder steeper to make that happen. All right, we got a few minutes left here. So John S says going to work on that power turn this weekend. Have a good one, y'all. Awesome. Thanks for sharing, John. Hopefully it goes good. All right, we'll go ahead and wrap it up right there. Thanks everybody for joining. We'll be back here Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a great rest of your weekend, and I'll talk to you all next time.